So step number one when drawing our portrait is that we want to draw a circle. The circle is to signify the cranium of the subject. And then step number two is that we want to place our oval. Now the oval is to represent the side plane of the cranium, so it effectively elongates the initial circle. And then we want to place our vertical and our horizontal axis lines. Now this gives us perspective for the circle in space. We're then going to pull over the top of the oval for the hairline. We're going to extend the horizontal axis over for the brow line, and then we're going to extend the bottom of the oval over for the bottom of our nose line. Then, because we're dealing with a profile angle, we're going to extend the center line of the face down. We're going to pull that over to the vertical line that we've extended, and that gives us our jaw. And then this gentleman here is in a specific pose where he's kind of hunched over, and so the neck is squished. It looks shorter than it actually is. But then, just to make it so that this is not a floating Loomis head, what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly sketch in the collar of his jacket. And then, I think what I'm going to do is I'm also going to draw in the shoulder as well. Why not? This just makes our drawing that much more dynamic, right? But I'm not going to get crazy with the details when it comes to the jacket, not at all. Because this is more or less just a basic, 15-minute sketch. But when it comes to how you start drawing your portrait, this is the best practice, okay? Because what we're doing here is we are laying the foundation for our proportions to come. Now, when it comes to drawing portraits specifically, the proportions are what's going to get you. It's not necessarily the detail work. We're going to erase that part of the initial circle, and then we're going to extend the cheek plane down, and then go ahead and hit your Loomis head with just a nice kneaded eraser and make your head more or less transparent on the paper so that we can still use the framework of it for when it comes to doing this. Obviously you do what you will, but for me, I prefer to sketch in the ear of my subject first. The ear is always going to be placed in the bottom rear quadrant of the side plane of the Loomis head. And of course, when I say rear, I mean rear to the what? That's right, rear to the front of the subject's face. Once the ear is placed, we can then use that as a gauge for the rest of our hairlines. Notice how I'm extending this line up and then simultaneously extending it up on the other side. And so I'm kind of using both the front half of the subject's hairline and the back of his head in tandem as I work my way up my initial Loomis head, and this helps me with proportion as far as the contour lines of my subject's hair. And then just for kicks, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in, I'm going to sketch in real lightly the segments of hair. Now, segments are pretty much what they sound like. They are just specific sections of the hair, and what their purpose is when drawing like this is to give us the flow of the hair. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to switch from the Loomis method to the Asaro method. Because this specific reference is in profile, what I like to do is start off with the nose first. Most of the time, yes, I start off with the eyes. But in this one, I want to show you that there are multiple ways to get to the same objective. So, notice if you're getting lost right here, just refer to the Asaro head model. I have identified my bottom plane. I've then drawn in the ridge plane of the nose. The ridge plane is the top of the nose. And then I have my nose tip plane. And then I have the nostril here. When it comes to the lips, this is a little different of a scenario because he has a nice trimmed up corporate style beard here. So I just kind of want to sketch that in and kind of give myself the shape that I'm going to be working with for everything below the nose to the jawline. And then here, this is where you would start with most other portraits, but we're going to extend the nose bridge plane off the top of the ridge plane. The ridge plugs into the bridge, so make sure you understand that they are similar but different. And then we have the basic two-dimensional shape of our eyebrow, and then we have our frame lines, just like this. We have the temple plane that extends down, that plugs into the second frame line. And then once all 4 of our frame lines are drawn in, then we connect them just like this. And that gives us our eye. All right. And then we have the slope plane. The slope plane is the side plane of the nose. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of bring out the bottom lip. There's not much in the way of detail here because we have that beard. But now I'm going to run this line up and kind of connect it, because we have a couple different lines that we want to draw in here. We want to draw our Asaro plane lines, which I'm going to show you those in a second. But then we also want to identify the outer edges of his beard, okay? Yeah, and then these lines kind of got lost when I erased, so I'll thicken those up. But then right here, we're going to extend this line off the corner of the mouth and then bring it up so that it plugs in to the nose right here, okay? And then my Asaro line is going to go up, and then it's going to go through the eye, just like this. And then we're going to continue to go up, and then it's going to go to the temple, and then we're going to go back straight, right to the top of the ear. If you need any help for this, just refer to the Asaro head model. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm gauging all of these lines off of. So if you have questions about it, just look at that Asaro head model, because that is going to be the answer to all of your questions, okay? But then right here, I'm just going to fill in the eyebrows. And then I want to thicken up the upper eyelid here where the eyelashes reside. And then I'm just going to start giving this sketch some detail work. Now, I know that a lot of you guys have been asking me to go deeper into detail work, so that's what I'm going to do with this one. Now, notice the direction that I'm pulling my hatch marks, okay? Now, you don't have to pull your hatch marks exactly like I am here, but one of the reasons why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing it, and I'm doing this on purpose, I'm sticking to each individual plane that I drew out, and then I am deliberately hatching with each individual strike in the direction of my underlying flow. Here, I'm going to cross-hatch this plane. See this? You notice how the value just got a lot lower. That's what happens when you cross-hatch. One of the most important things that you want to keep in the back of your mind when you are hatching your drawings is that less is more, and that you always want to use a very light pressure control. But just like this, just 1, 2, 3, 4, doesn't matter. And don't even count them, just feel them. Feel each strike of the paper, okay? And pay attention to your reference photo. Now, when it comes to the hatch marks like this, I'm not looking at my Asaro head model anymore. I'm looking at my original reference photo, because what I'm trying to bring out is what they call the underlying flow. Now, the Asaro method specifically helps me to gauge what that underlying flow looks like, because the Asaro planes frame it, right? Once it's framed, then it's very, very easy to see it, to understand it, and keep it in the front of your mind when it comes to this part of the drawing process where you're building your mid, high, and low values. But then when it comes to the beard, beards are great practice for this. When it comes to practicing the flow, right, the angle at which you are pushing or pulling your hatch marks, beards are wonderful because most individuals have different growth patterns. They're similar, but they're different. So when you are drawing your subject, pay attention to exactly how that hair is flowing within the beard. And what this will do for you is this will, one, it'll help you practice flow and underlying form, but at the same time, it's also going to slow you down. And you want that. You want to be slowed down. So much of the time when we're doing something that we enjoy, especially when it comes to the visual arts, we tend to go faster. And don't get me wrong, a lot of times, yes, speed does come with practice, but sometimes to slow down deliberately, to really analyze exactly what it is that your pencil is doing every time it strikes the paper is very much the art of the process. It's something that is so simple and so overlooked by someone who maybe is not an artist themselves, or maybe they just have yet to grow to appreciate the intricacies of a simple gesture on paper, that it is very much something that you, as the artist, need to take into account for yourself. But you don't have to if you don't want to. I like drawing more than most people. I love to talk about it. I study it. I read about it. I make it. I very much live it. And for you, especially if drawing is something that makes you happy, it is worth every minute that you spend analyzing it as such. But notice this, right? Notice the hatch marks. Now, when I analyze my subject's beard, one of the things that jumped out at me was how short each individual beard hair is on his chin and upper lip. So I'm using that to my advantage, and I'm going through and I'm just doing nice short pulls, and then I'm layering those strikes on top of that. Now, the cool thing with doing this is that I can bring out the growth pattern fairly accurately to what his actually is in the reference photo. So just be aware of that. Yeah, this one's looking pretty good so far. A lot of times when you're drawing subjects with beards, it makes it difficult for you to place those Asaro planes. But you should still do it because it's just a good best practice for you. But then notice how we can go back over these hairlines in certain areas of the beard, and what that does is that lowers my value and makes it darker in those specific areas, and it just makes my drawing that much more dynamic, right? Okay, yeah, this is looking pretty good. All right, so now I have a low value here, but then it kind of fades off into a much higher value. So as I move my hatch marks to the right towards the edge of his face, I want to go lighter and lighter and lighter to the point where I don't even touch the paper anymore. And that'll give me that nice, it's a rough gradation effect, but it is still a gradation effect. A lot of times when you hear the term gradation, it's meant to be a completely smooth blend across various values. But you can still use the term in that context that I just used. You just have to make sure that there actually is this gradual ascension from, say, a lower value to a higher value, or descension, right, from high to low. Okay, so kind of like how before when I was just slapping in those hair segments, I want to go back through now and I can add more character to the hair, and I can really bring out how his hair flows. The type of haircut that he has very short hair on the sides and the back. almost like a fade, that's grown out a bit. And then, of course, the top of his hair is very long. So, but I hope by now you're starting to see that as long as you keep adding detail and spend more and more time with your drawing, it's just going to look more and more dynamic, more and more like the reference photo. One of the reasons why I keep these step-by-step drawing tutorials fairly short is because I just want to show you the basic principles to get your proportions, right? Because in my opinion, that is one of the hardest things to do when it comes to portraiture, is the beginning, right? When you have nothing, when you are the most unsure, when you have zero framework. That is where the Loomis method will save you, and that is where the Asaro method definitely helps you in building out those features like the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, all the things. And then just like this, notice, if you actually look at the reference photo, you can see how the very bottom of his chin and his jaw are actually of a lower value, because that facial hair, right, that beard, is actually thicker in that area. So I can go in and I can just layer it, just layer on top of layer on top of layer, and that value will get lower and lower. But then here I'm just going through his jacket. I'm giving him, this detail here, that detail there. And then I didn't really like how I just kind of slapped those segments on the side and the back of his head initially. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to hatch in some more detail work for it. And hopefully this will bring out a better flow for how his hair actually lives on his head. Yeah, something just like that. And that's pretty much it for this one. I hope that you got something out of it. If you enjoyed it, there's a lot more where that came from. I have dozens and dozens of step-by-step drawing tutorials just like this, so check them out. Stay happy, stay healthy, and remember, never stop drawing.